Is Mike, your co-host, one of your co-hosts of Saturday Morning Multifamily Unplugged. And I am joined today, as usual, by my co-host, Moose. What's up, Moose?
How you doing, Mike? Another
Good.
beautiful day here in Chicago.
I heard you took it easy last night, huh?
Oh, come on. Leave me alone. Yes, I took it very easy last night. You're always giving me a hard time about
I
that.
have to, Carl. That's my job. You know that. So anyhow, and we are joined this morning by Kirsten Summers. Kirsten, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm very well. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. We'll get back. We'll introduce you in a minute. But hey, everybody, if you are joining us live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Clubhouse, welcome this morning. We're here every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time. And we always have somebody on who's smarter than Carl and I for sure, and going to bring some good content. So if you're on Clubhouse, we will have no conversation on Clubhouse. It'll be listen only. But if you are on Facebook or LinkedIn, you should be able to put a comment in the chat, and hopefully we'll be able to get those questions answered for you. So this morning's show is brought to you by Urban REI Property Management, your local Chicago property management firm. And listen, here's what I want to talk about first is Carl just put a new book out. And let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah, thank you. No, I didn't think we were going to talk about that today. Yeah, it's for those of you that know me, I'm a member of the Napoleon Hill Foundation. And of course, Napoleon Hill wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. And I'm a certified trainer for that and been studying it for decades. So one of my students actually who's published 13 books kept telling me, you got to write your book. You got to write a book. And of course, I don't like to write. So it ends up, I did it. And it's finally launched. And yeah, I'll put the link in the chat. It's called Unstoppable You. It's a very short read. It's only 5 chapters. It talks about the things that stop us, right? Our fears, doubt, confusion, indecision, and worry. And it's, I don't care who you are, whatever, in whatever area of life. If you look any place you're stopped, it's one or a combination of those 5 things that stop you. So yeah, absolutely. I'll put a link in the chat, Mike. And if anybody wants to download it, they can go and get an excerpt out of it. No cost. Mike. My early holiday gift to everybody.
Oh, nice, Carl. Thank you. And anybody on Clubhouse, just back channel us and we'll get you that link. And if you're on Facebook or another platform, just ping Carl or DM me and we'll get that for you. So like we ask every week, we don't ask anything for this show other than the fact, just go like us and love us wherever you hang out on social media. You'll find us on every platform out there. And just go, follow us or wherever you stream or wherever you post content. All right. Well, let's get down to it this morning. Kirsten, good morning. How are you? Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from and what you're about.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Kirsten Summers. I'm a financial advisor with Morgan Stanley. I have lived all over the world. I was just telling Carl about it before we went live here. But I'm currently in Chicago. I've lived here since 2019. It is a very cool city to live in. I'm walking distance to the building formerly known as the Sears Tower or Willis Tower, depending on how much of a native you are and how willing you are to change the name. I previously worked in the music industry and the entertainment end on a business capacity. So I worked on films and TV shows overseeing their music departments. I did that until I was about 29. I was also a adjunct professor at Belmont University. I did that for about 5 years. Same thing. I taught what's called music supervision, which is just the business and psychology of placing music in movies and television. And I got to a point in that work where I hit a level of success. I was involved, I was nominated for a Daytime Emmy Award in 2017, I think. And I thought, well, let's go out while we're on top. And I said, let's leave the country. Let's leave the industry. I sold all my stuff. I donated. I got rid of everything I owned, traveled for about a year, and then landed in Chicago thinking, what's next? I wanted to be close to my family, and I started my financial advising practice, and here we are today.
Carl, you usually don't bring such good guests on.
I know. Usually,
holy cow.
Kirsten, Mike is usually the guy that books the guests, and so I actually learned a couple things about you today, Kirsten. So yeah, really great to have you, and I'm interested in the conversation. So I got to ask you, I'm sure other people ask you, what's your favorite jingle? I mean, do you have a favorite tune from a movie or?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to plug one of my friends right now. So I have two friends. They're a married couple. And one wrote the music for Dune, the movie that's in the theaters right now. And his wife actually offered some vocals on it, so I can hear her voice and his music. So I'm gonna be a little corny and say that that's my favorite, at least at the moment.
Nice.
Wow, cool.
Most current favorite, right?
Nice.
Most current, exactly
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So where you said you traveled, you sold everything, you left the country. Where'd you go? Where'd you travel? Tell us the coolest thing you saw or experienced.
Ooh, I love the questions that people come up with when I mention my big trip. So it was 4 months in Europe, 4 in Southeast Asia, and 4 in Latin America, so Central and South America. And I hit 27 countries on that trip in total. And the coolest thing I saw, that's a good question. You know what?
You stumped them right.
See, I love the unique questions people come up with. I usually get, what's your favorite country? What's your favorite city? But that's a good one. I think the coolest concept, how about that, was in the city of Prague. So they had a lot of their, we're used to bars in America. You go, you order your drink, you get your drink, you pay your tab. That's the experience, right? With maybe some debauchery in between. Carl, it sounds like maybe you had a wild night, or at least we're alluding to some.
Whoa, Carl, look at that. Everybody picks up on that stuff, right?
But so the city of Prague has all these concept bars where they're really unique. So one, for example, there isn't a menu. You go, it's really intimate, maybe, I don't know, 20 seats total in the whole place. There's 2 bartenders, and they'll come up to you and they're very serious, a little bit intimidating, and they'll just ask, what flavors do you like? Mint, rosemary, lemon, whatever. And then they'll create something completely unique for you. And then there are other bars where one gave you a Rorschach test, the ink blot test, and whichever ink blot test you chose of the cards they gave you designated the drink that they would serve you. So just like really cool concept. So yeah, I'm going to go with Prague and their concept bars.
Prague, Poland?
Prague is in what is currently, as today, it's Czechia. It was formerly Czech Republic when I was there.
Eastern Europe, yep.
Mm-hmm.
So did you go to any place like Machu Picchu or the Taj Mahal or any place like that?
So I didn't make it to Machu Picchu, but I did go to Peru. At that point, I was 8 months into my trip. I was broke and I was lazy, and I just couldn't fathom the idea of planning one more big trip. So at that point, I was just schlepping. When I say, those videos you see online of like a puppy who's really excited and going for a walk? That was me the first 7 months. And then you see the puppy totally pooped, just like legs akimbo getting dragged. That was me the last 4 months.
Oh, that's funny.
I saw a picture of a cat the other day laying in front of a fireplace like that on a pillow on social media. It was so funny. I thought it was really funny.
Cute. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you had some great memories. And did you go solo or you were traveling by yourself?
So I started with a group of about 50 people, which over time, slimmed out. And then I left at month eight and did Latin America on my own.
That's awesome.
Kind of what was that movie? Eat, Pray, Love? Or is that kind of what you went and did? Good
it
for
was
you.
a lot like that.
Nice, good for you.
A good friend of mine, his nickname's the Bear because he looks like a bear, and he used to work construction work. So he'd literally work in the summers and hibernate in the winters. I remember he told us one time, "Yeah, I'm going to Mexico." Like, well, hey, what are you doing, Bear? And he lives in Chicago, or lived in Chicago. So the winters, there's no construction. And he said, "Oh, I'm going to go to Mexico for a few weeks." Like 4 months later, he's still gone. Everyone's like, "Did he fall off a bridge somewhere?" Or he showed back up like 4 months later. So, I had a great time,
Yeah. Sometimes you can't leave. By the way, I love you've got moose and bear. You've got a whole zoo of friends in your circle.
You ready for this? You're not going to believe
I like
this.
going to the zoo, by the way.
You're not going to believe this. When we lived in Lincoln Park, we lived with another guy named Fred Fox.
Oh, my gosh.
He was Lieutenant Fred Fox. He was a naval aviator. So we had moose, bear, and fox on the mailbox. I remember one time the little mail lady came up to me, and I was there to get the mail, and she looks at me and she goes, are you bear? Are you fox? Are you moose? I'm like, no, I'm moose. So that was an animal house too. It was a lot of fun.
And I love that you were in Lincoln Park, which has the zoo.
So let me just reset the room real quick if I can. Hey, if you're joining us this morning, we are using StreamYard now. We're off as a Zoom platform. If you are on Clubhouse, welcome. Glad that you're here this morning. It's listen only on Clubhouse this morning. However, if you want to try and back channel us, use the messaging on Clubhouse. And if you're live on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube, we're glad that you're here this morning. We're joined by Kirsten Summers, and we're going to talk about a little bit about financial planning. Right now, we've been talking about some of the great places in the world, right? So, hey, Kirsten, so you came back to Chicago after all those travels, had to find a job. What did you set out to do? And anything in particular, or did you just kind of happen into what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I grew up in a household. My dad is formerly an analyst and an options trader. So these conversations I've been having at the dinner table since I was young. But when I came to Chicago, after my trip ended and I decided I wanted to be closer to my family, I thought, okay, I have experience teaching. I really love that. I personally am a huge fanatic of psychology and relational psychology specifically. And then I'm also, I think, kind of personable. So sales, owning a business, that made a lot of sense for my strengths. And honestly, I gave myself 3 weeks when I came to Chicago in an Airbnb to get an apartment and to get a job. So I was going to job fairs. I was interviewing other people about what they do. And then when I found financial advising, of course, something that my parents had been telling me I should have done since I left college, but I had to spend all my 20s rebelling in the music industry, obviously. But when I discovered this and someone suggested it to me, I thought it kind of combined everything that I was looking for: teaching, psychology, owning a business, and a little bit of sales too. And I know I didn't prep you with this. You are speaking with a celebrity this morning. I am the Illinois State 1997 fourth grade math champion.
Oh my goodness.
So I can do some math as well. So it just kind of worked out really, really in an amazing way. And the fact that I get to work within my practice and focus on entertainment industry professionals, it's just a perfect merger of everything that I've done up to this point.
That's really cool. Yeah, I lived in San Francisco for about 4 years. I was selling equipment to the semiconductor industry.
Yeah.
So you said you still have a lot of contacts. You're on both coasts or all over the place. That's great. And that's interesting. I mean, that whole, there's a couple industries I don't know very much about. The medical field. I know a couple of people that are doctors, and the entertainment and music field. And when I was in California, you ran into a lot of that, you know what I mean? And it's so funny because I remember one time I was in San Francisco at Rocket's hamburger place. I don't know if they still have those or not, but literally it was a Saturday morning in the marina, like in San Francisco. And I'm reading the paper and Robin Williams sits down like two stools next to me. He just orders a burger, a shake, and fries. And it's like, no big deal. I'm like, I was like, that's Robin Williams, and it's like, because out there, one time Sandra Bullock cut me off. She was in a Rolls Royce.
Oh my gosh!
She goes down the window. I look at her. I was like, "That's Sandra Bullock."
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So,
road rage? Did your road rage kick in?
Yeah. What'd you do?
I just was kind of I didn't chase her. I was driving a beat up piece of junk, so I was like, I'm gonna make distance. I don't want her to see me. You know what I mean?
Right.
But that's interesting. I mean, I'm sure you have some, and we don't need to go into it, but I'm sure you have some interesting stories about people from, in that industry, because it's a cool industry.
It is. I'll say this. A lot of times people ask me, who is the best to work with and who is the worst to work with celebrity wise. And I don't want to call anybody out on a public platform, but I'll tell you.
Go ahead. Carl would.
Well, how about this? The persona that you receive is pretty true. So people say the media spins it and that was edited wrong. Only to a point.
Okay, that's interesting. We don't need to go too far down that rabbit hole, right? Because but Mike, bring it back to multifamily. I mean, do you have any questions? I got some questions, but
here's what I want to say. You were the fourth grade math champion. I hated math. I can remember sitting in school in high school having this conversation with Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas, I will never use this stuff ever. Yes, you will. No, I won't. Yes, you will. No, I won't. And you know what? Today I love it, right?
Ah,
Absolutely love the numbers and what you can do and how you can look at deals. And, you know, I mean, I honestly, we built a spreadsheet that we've used for 20 years to evaluate multifamily, and it's very fluid. It keeps changing. You know, we improve things on it. We make things work differently. I'm hesitant to put it into an app only because then it's locked in, right? So now I get to use it however I want to use it. And I absolutely love to look at the numbers because it tells the story, right? And it really, you know, math tells the story. And so you know, geez, state champion, you know, have a lot more respect for you now than I did before we started the show.
it was all downhill after fourth grade.
Did you get a little trophy? Do you still have it somewhere?
I have a certificate that is hung in my parents' den in their home.
Is that right up there with the Emmy nomination? I got to ask.
Right next to each other. Actually, my Emmy certificate does not have nearly as much panache. It's okay. I can see it. It's sitting on my like end table over in my living room. So
that's really funny. But you know what? It's true. You know, my dad was a professor of economics, and he always told us math and science. He said, if you can figure out math and science, and I ended up getting a degree in geology because I played hockey in upstate New York in college. And the academic advisor for the hockey team was a hydrologist. You know, he had written books. And so all the athletes took Geo 101. I mean, they called it rocks for jocks. And I loved it, you know, I mean, because it combined math and science, which are two things I loved. And then every quarter or every semester, we would go in a week into the field and look for stuff, you know, fossils or whatever. So we'd take a week long, it was like a camping trip, and we got credit for it, you know, so. You know, that's really good. And, you know, Mike, I just got to say, Kristen, you don't know this. I've known Mike for a long time, and I've been in real estate for a long time. There's very few people I know that analyze a property. And I used to be a banker. You know, I was trained as an analyst to analyze multifamily properties. And, you know, as much as Mike says he hates numbers, that's one of his real strengths is he is an underwriting just guru when it comes to underwriting. And, you know, have you ever bought a piece of property by multifamily or and the reason I ask is because when you're a professional investor, you analyze a lot of deals. I mean, you might look at. I mean, Mike, how many deals did you look at last week?
Last week we looked at 20, maybe 25. Yeah.
Yeah. So getting good at the numbers, I guess, is the point. Is getting good at the numbers really is important because you can eliminate far more deals than you ever write a contract on.
So let me say this. Here's why, right? I mean, I underwrote 100 deals to write 7 LOIs to get one deal accepted. You know, our first deal this year. You know, not everything makes sense. The fundamentals are kind of upside down. Talk about some of that, Kristen. I mean, what are you seeing in the markets today, and what are you seeing as a, you know, where the world's at, and where do you think we're headed?
So when it comes to real estate. Over the last, I mean, you two know this better than anybody, but over the last, call it 2 years, I think people have gotten really excited and focused on investing in real estate a lot more because of their lending rates being so low. The mistake that I'm seeing happening is people are, because of the low inventory, because everybody scooped everything up right away, is now people are buying properties that are, I want to say overvalued, but just overpriced. So they're in the end, they're thinking, oh, I'm making this great investment. I know that I'm supposed to diversify my overall portfolio with real estate, but in the end, I don't know that people are making a great decision. They're thinking a little bit short-sighted. And then the new fear that's come up, and again, I'm sure you two can speak to this with a little bit more depth, but the idea that, okay, rates are going to start rising, I've got to be buying everything now. But again, the same concept and the same mistake keeps coming up, especially for my Los Angeles clients where real estate is outrageous. It might be okay. It's like you said, Mike, using the numbers to tell that story and find the answer we're looking for of where is that break-even point? Does it make sense to buy something that's overpriced now at a lower rate, or even with rates going up over time, wait for those overvalued properties to come down in cost for that long-term ability to resell later on. So that's a big mistake that I'm seeing, is just that panic buying and that panic purchase. I do have a personal friend who just bought a multi-family property, and he hasn't owned any property at all before that. It's his first real estate purchase. And he's very smart, and I advised him as best that I could. I just worry that it was, like I said, a panic buy, and they're getting in way over their head. The term house poor, we'll call it multi-house poor in this case, is probably going to be realistically in their financial plan coming up. And again, it just comes back to that psychology piece of teaching people and getting people to relax a little bit before they make these panic purchases.
And how big of a multifamily was that?
I think I want to say, I don't remember off the top of my head. It was between 2 and 4.
Okay, it was on the residential side still.
Yes, exactly.
You might want to get him a copy of my book, Exit Plan, which is your
that'd be great.
Yeah, complete guide to. I'll send you a link when I send this to you. So
that would be great.
It's interesting you say it, because Mike and I talk about this all the time. And cap rate. A lot of people don't know what cap rate is, but it's the capitalization rate. And if you're a buyer, a low cap rate is not a good thing, and it's relative to the net operating income of a property and the sales price. And obviously, the net operating income is dependent on rents and expenses, and those things are far less volatile than the pricing, because the pricing is a market-driven thing. And so your cap rates. If your NOI is stable or relatively stable, but the prices are going up, your cap rate's going to go down and get compressed. And that's where we are right now. And you've got the insurance companies, you've got the institutional buyers, you got the real estate investment trusts, the REITs that have the money and can afford to buy at a lower cap rate because it's a longer term play for them, and they can ride out a couple of presidencies or whatever's going on in Washington. Because they have the deep pockets to do that. And a lot of buyers are doing exactly what you said, Kristen. They're thinking, oh my God, I gotta catch the wave now, and they're buying properties that Mike and I would look at and go, there's no way I'm buying that cap rate. The numbers don't work. And when you get into that situation, 3-4 years down the road, you're over leveraged, or you start to see some vacancies. And your cash flow goes down, you get in trouble. So 100%. And Mike, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I just wanted to acknowledge that you hit it right on the head.
Cap rate's a funny fundamental right now, and I honestly don't know if it's even a way anymore as we continue to go to see what you're doing. It used to be a guiding light, right? You could buy an A-class deal and it was a 4 cap or a 5 cap, and the institutional buyers knew, hey, I'm going to get a coupon. I can pay my investors or my annuity at the insurance company, and and it was fine. And your B-class deals were 6 and 7s. And today, I bought a deal in Tampa, a 5 cap. We're closing next week. I think that we could close, put it back on the market, and sell it at a 4 and not do a thing to it, and make $700,000 like that, right? I mean, it's just crazy where the market's going. And people have said, well, why don't you do that? And I said, well, because we have a defeasance on it and it'd kill us, so it wouldn't be worth doing it. So
what's your, and I know we don't want to cross any boundaries, but how do you? And I love the fact that you're a teacher and you bring other aspects to, financial planning, and the psychology of it, which is very interesting. How do you address that? I mean, what do you tell people when they say, oh, I'm going to put this on hold, but I got to buy a property right now because everybody else is doing it, or I don't have one. I mean, how do you manage it? I'm just curious about how you do that from personally.
Yeah. So from the psychology aspect, it's who am I sitting across the table from? Is this someone who looks at me as an advisor, or is this someone who looks at me as someone to validate their own opinions? And honestly, I work with people in both of those camps. So it's really getting down to, what are they really asking me? Do they honestly want me to sit down, like Mike said, with the numbers and show them this versus this? Do they want me to just say, I don't think it's a good idea, but go ahead and we'll figure it out later. So it's first addressing who that person is and what the question that's actually being asked is. But then from there, I try and assert myself as, I like to call myself a person's CFO, and they are the CEO. So it's my job to bring them information, to bring them analysis, and show them what the long-term impact might be from decisions they make before they make those decisions. My job isn't necessarily to say do or don't. It's to say, here are your options and here's what you can expect to happen from there. So sometimes it's numbers, sometimes it's conversation. Really just depends on the individual, I think.
Yeah, that's really great. So you're a trusted advisor. I mean, you really are an advisor, and I love that approach that you're not trying to take control of their whatever it is, their company, or your analogy, the CEO, right? You're the CFO. You're the one that comes in, and the CFO's job is to give that financial advice. So that's really great.
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask. I'm going to ask a question, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, because I'm going to ask for a personal opinion over a professional opinion.
Are you going to ask me or Kristen this question? Because there's a lot of questions you ask me, Mike. I don't want to answer.
Are you still here? Really? But where would you put your money today? And that might be a bad question for this, but where would you put your money today? With inflation, with I see shades of 2007, 2008 happening right now, overinflated housing markets. Where do you see some safety or protection in the market?
And just before you answer that, Kristen, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on today, Mike, that wasn't going on in 2008, like this whole thing with COVID, with the unemployment being record low, price of materials. So there's a lot going on. So anyway, go ahead, Kristen. Go ahead.
Well, and listen, if you don't want to answer that, you could sing for us.
I'll go turn the computer and play my piano for you. Just wrote a song yesterday, actually. But that is not the answer to the question. So that's a great question. And it's the question, honestly, that everybody's asking, Mike. How do I protect my money, and how do I continue to grow at the rate that I have been for the last 10 years when we've been in a bull market? And it's really tough to answer that right now. There isn't a great answer. So I think if you are the type of person who follows Dave Ramsey and you don't want to have debt, this might be a good time to start focusing on paying off your mortgage. If you are okay with debt, leveraging some of your assets, you don't necessarily have any qualms with having some debt, this might also be a good time to start leveraging some of your assets to give yourself more entry point to the market and invest a little bit more. However, this is my personal opinion, dated as of December 11th, 2021. I personally would stay away from more passive investments. So ETFs, individual stocks. I would want something with a little bit more hands-on approach. Things like, I know not everybody likes mutual funds, but mutual funds or separately managed accounts, or opportunities where there's more diversification and there's someone overseeing what's happening. I'm not necessarily riding the ups and downs of the market with some of the more passive investment strategies.
So passive real estate investing might be okay though.
Yeah, sure.
Where like I'm a syndicator, I put a deal together and we raise private equity around that. So passive real estate investing, because there's that, you get a coupon and there's a back end IRR. And so, what do you think about real estate as a hedge for inflation and, the upcoming couple of years?
I think it's a great investment. I think it's an excellent opportunity to, especially for people that are a little more skittish with the market and have that knee-jerk reaction of, oh my gosh, I'm scared, I have to pull my money out, which please don't do that. But I think it's an excellent investment opportunity. I think it's a great idea to, again, diversify your overall financial picture and have a little bit more, I say safety conservatively, but just an opportunity that isn't necessarily correlated to the stock market, but has opportunity to grow over time.
So I had a conversation with a guy. He's doing pretty well. He's in sales. He probably makes $250,000 a year. He's doing pretty well. young guy in his 30s, and he was all and again, if we cross a boundary here, just let us know.
Sure.
He's like, oh, I'm going to take all my money moose, I'm going to put it in crypto. He's crypto. Okay, enough said, right?
I want to see why you. I want to know why you did that. Okay, because it's like everybody.
And he's not married. He doesn't have any kids, right? He doesn't have any real estate either. I'm like, dude, you gotta go buy a 4-flat. Doesn't own. He rents, believe it or not. He's in the Gold Coast and he rents, or River North. And I'm like, go buy a 4-flat. You can get first-time home buyer financing. You can, it makes sense. You get up 3 other people living, there. I said there. You might even get a couple cute girls to move in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
And he said, I said, you're going to learn about being a landlord. You're going to learn about, and you get them to pay your rent. You'll get them to pay your taxes. It's a good investment. He's like, no, I'm putting it all in crypto. I'm like, oh man, whatever.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that or no?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not uncommon. I'm not going to repeat it, but you mentioned the gender, which I stereotypically see that kind of investment behavior in, and the age group. I think crypto is here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think 10 years from now, you have your equities, your stocks, you have your fixed income, your bonds, your alternatives, and then crypto. I think it's going to be just as inclusive of an asset class for portfolio construction in 10 years, when the government can regulate it and there are some boundaries, there's a box around it. I think it's here to stay. But right now, for me, my work is really long-term planning. So it's too risky for me, especially in retirement accounts. If anybody comes to me with crypto, I immediately, first thing is, you have to take this out of your retirement accounts.
It's interesting you say that, because I wonder how the government is going to intervene. Because at some point they're going to, they do what they want to do when they want to do it anyhow. So, so at some point they're going to have to intervene or do something, because I think it is getting so, loud, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's everywhere on social media. Every time you turn around, somebody is knocking on your door. Hey, do you know what Bitcoin is? Hey, do you know what crypto is?
For me, I like Warren Buffett's approach. if I don't know it, if I don't understand it, I'm not going to get involved with it. And do you miss out on opportunities? Yeah, you do. Like, my dad was a constant dollar average investor. He took a fixed amount every month and invested, in certain stocks, right? That was his strategy. And I don't want to go too far into strategy, but that's kind of where I learned it. And he's sitting on multiple 7 figures, you know what I mean? And just from that, and it was a very, when IBM was low, he bought more. When IBM was high, he bought less. You know what I mean? And that was his, and he always told my brother and I, and actually I have 4 sisters. I mean, they were listening too. Yeah. But he was primarily telling my brother and I, if you're going to go play the stock market and you don't do it professionally, you might as well go to the horse track. He said, because you're dealing with professionals. If you're not going to engage a professional, and have them advise you, you're like playing the horses, right? And I always took that approach. So the crypto, I get it. My buddy just bought a new Harley and he claims it's from his crypto money. I'm like, good for you. That's cool. That's awesome. I said, I don't know enough about it, and when it comes back around, maybe I'll jump in. So
yeah, it's the Wild West right now.
It is. So here's what I'd like to know: your opinion. You're in the space every day. Where's the market going? Where do you see us going short term, 12, 24 months, and then beyond the election? And then I'll tell you my opinion, but I want to hear yours first.
That's such a tough question, and everybody wants that answer, right? And the generic response is, if I had a crystal ball and could answer it well, I would be broadcasting from the Bahamas. Not
you don't have. I thought you had a crystal ball.
No, I lost it on my trip. That's what happened. I think that we might see. I don't know. We might see a little bit of a dip, as we've seen some rolling corrections over the last quarter. I think we may continue to see a little bit more of that. I personally have no idea, but I don't necessarily anticipate that we're going to have a huge bull run like we did over the last 10 years. I think that happened and has ended, and something new is going to come up in the way of technology. So technology, especially the big names, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, they ran the stock market and drew up the technology sector so much over the last 10 years. And I think that experience, like I said, has run its course, and something new is going to take its place. But I don't know that we're going to see as huge of a spike as we did. So I think we can expect a little more regulatory, or not regulatory, but flat, not so much up. I think we can expect a normal cycle over the next 10 years. But again, it's hard to say. And you asked about the election specifically, which is something that comes up every couple of years because people get scared and they think, well, that's going to drive everything crazy. But over time, elections don't really have a huge impact. It's sort of a drop in the bucket for a month, and then it kind of goes away.
So Mike, before we get your opinion, I just want to comment. So I love that you talked about a 10, 12-year cycle, because in real estate, it's the same thing. And I learned that, I had some clients of mine that had been in the industry for 30, 40 years. And they were saying the same thing. They were like, Carl, it's just a cycle. It's just another cycle. It happens every 8 to 12 years, average 10 years, right? And you got to just know where you are on that cycle. Are you in a hold mode? Are you in a buy mode? Are you in a sell mode? Are you in a reposition mode, I should say, not mode, but mode. And they said just recognizing that cycle is so key, because it comes. And, if you've been in the business, as long as Mike and I have, you've seen them, right? And you've seen the cycle. So the key is to really recognize where the cycle is and what the opportunities are, because there's opportunities in all of those modalities. And so understanding it's key. So I just want to comment. I'm glad you mentioned that, because we live in cycles. So
easy on the age indications, would you, Carl? Like you've been in the business as long as Mike and I have. Come on.
I included myself. I didn't just say you, Mike.
So where were you, Kirsten? Where were you in 2008, 2009 when the world fell apart?
I was in college.
Okay. So you remember what happened? The world, I'm having lunch in 2008 with my CFO, and the news is on, and they're carrying boxes out of Lehman Brothers by the dozens. And I go, we're screwed, aren't we? He goes, yeah, we're in big trouble. And I had $100 million company, and it's just gone, wiped out. And so, I'm concerned, but I'm not concerned enough to not do anything, right? Yeah. I'm not an economist. I'm not a financial analyst. I do enough to stay in the mix. I love guys like the CEO of Marcus Millichap, Hanil or some, I can't think of his name right now, but he is really smart. And when I listened to him about the state of the markets, he did a webcast a couple of weeks ago that had I can't think of her name. She's like second from the top at Goldman Sachs.
Okay.
And Lori something. And then another guy who's been in the multifamily space like 45 years. And I'm like, God, I've never heard of this guy. But, these guys talked about where the market sits today and where they think it's going to go. I've read reports from Axiom and Reese, and I've read free stuff. And, and when I look at it, it appears, like I read a report the other day that said in 2022, we're going to see rent increases in Tampa, Florida, where I'm heavily vested right now, where those rent increases will go up 15%. Next year in 23, we'll see 13%. And after that, they'll be 3%. What I'm looking for today is I'm looking for high population migration, going to markets that are going to drive job growth, drive household income, drive rent growth. And that's where I need to be. When I invest in a market like Chicago, I don't very often.
Well, the other thing, Mike, the other thing is you get housing shortages there too. You can't just pop. People can move into an area much more rapidly than the housing market can adjust to that. So, if you've got multifamily, I know that's part of your mix too, is, you like to go to areas where all those things are moving up, and there's going to be a shortage of housing. So if you own multifamilies, that's great. You can increase your rents, and people always need a place to live. So. And I don't know if you had a question for Christian. I jumped right in there.
Yeah, no, I'm just making kind of a broad brush statement, and see if she has any response or comment about it.
Well, my question for you, Mike, then is, if you're focusing on markets that have strong one-way traffic, are you then looking at, what I've seen are the states that have no income tax: Texas, Florida, Tennessee, Nevada? Are those your markets?
Yes, Texas, Florida, and in Texas, you got to watch primary markets, right? So I have to watch Dallas, Houston, Austin. Austin's a tough market to break into, but if you can build it, and it's such a relationship business, right? My conversation with the brokers always, hey, where are we going to have dinner when we get this deal closed?
Yeah.
So we have to figure out how to get the deals done, because we're underwriting a ton of deals. But and I know Memphis has come up in conversation a little bit. So when you talk about Tennessee, so yeah, there are those other markets.
So Mike, listen, I told Kristen I was looking for a new co-host. So way to take control of the conversation there, Kristen.
I'll just start asking you all questions now.
I like the way you flipped that around and started asking Mike questions. So Mike, you might be out.
I will yield my mic anytime you want.
Listen, I have a podcasting mic. I'm not on it now, but I'm ready.
You do a podcast? Are you on a podcast?
No, it was from when I was a professor at Belmont. When I was teaching remotely after COVID and everything. I just wanted to make sure I had clear audio, so no one could try and say, "Oh, Professor Summers, well, I heard you say this." That take all the excuses out of their mouths.
Yeah. So tell us about that? That's really interesting. How did you fall into that, or was it by design, or did you
completely fell into it? So. I worked at a TV show called The Talk on CBS for 4 years. And there was one day I was sitting in the audio booth with the audio engineer, and his daughter was visiting, and she went to the same school I did, Belmont, and said, "Hey, we're having a student alumni get together in Los Angeles. You should come." So I did. And I met with one of the administrators who was there leading it. And she said, "Oh my gosh, your music supervisor," which is what my title was formerly, we have our semester starting in 3 weeks, and our music supervision professor just gave his notice. Would you be interested in teaching this class? Granted, I was 27 at the time. I had no teaching experience. I was barely older than the students, and thought, okay, why not? So I read a textbook in 3 weeks and formed a class, and then I loved it, and I continued growing it and revamped the entire class over 5 years, and I miss it, and I wish I had time to do it more.
That's awesome.
Hey, we have to step our game up, Moose. This is
the
most famous person we've ever had on this show. She's a fourth grade math champion. She's all over the world. Come on, we have to step our game up.
She's writing songs in her spare time. Like, I wrote a song this morning. Like, yeah, no big deal.
Yeah, yesterday, but yeah.
That's pretty good. No, but that's interesting. I mean, that's really interesting. And Mike teaches courses in real estate. I do. With the Napoleon Hill Foundation, I do courses. Around Think and Grow Rich, and focus. I brand myself as your focus guy, because it's in my world, it's all about finding, maintaining, and sustaining focus in all areas of your life. So there's a lot that goes into that, you know what I mean, and just being accountable and putting logical sequences of lessons together, and all the support material and everything else. And most of what he and I do is over Zoom, but being in front of an audience, which I actually love that, you know what I mean, being in front of a live audience, because you can pick up on the energy, you can kind of call people out, or if you want, put a shill in the audience, someone that asks you questions or the answers to. That always helps. Mike does that a lot, but it's a lot, and I'm sure your students, they probably loved you. I mean, your students were, I remember my good professors, right? I mean, I remember professors that made a difference. So I think that's really cool. Do you have any desire to do that later, or that's kind of like a chapter that you closed?
So I do have a similar desire, which I'm going to share with you. And Carl, it sounds like we're going to team up and do this together. So I have a secret want that I'm now offering on this public platform to write a book or books, and then go on book tours and be able to educate on a large scale. So you and I can team up, and you can educate on multifamily property investments, and I'll educate on financial planning, and it's just going to be great. I'll be the next Susie Orman, and you be, who do you want to be?
I like Dyer. I like Dr. Dyer. He was
Perfect.
he wasn't too gimmicky. He wasn't too showman. He was just, I really liked him. He was great. So
There we go.
God rest his soul. All right. Well, we'll talk about that offline. And we might have to get Mike to come in as a guest because he's really good too. Trust me.
Perfect.
Hey, I appreciate that. So we're about 45 minutes in. Time to start winding down a little bit. And so, Kristen,
Mike, I got a question. Can I help you?
Go ahead.
So, Kristen, tell us, if you can, is there an ideal, who's an ideal client for you, or somebody, that would be a good referral? And then we want to make sure that we get your information in the chat as well, if that's appropriate.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. Yeah, for me, I am not the advisor for everyone. I'm going to start with that. Someone who wants that sharky day trader who's going to advise them on crypto and some of the more risky stuff, they're going to be really unhappy with my style. I come with a lot of education, a lot of conversation, a lot of consideration for today and tomorrow. And so for me, typically, I would say a good client is someone with investable assets, of course, someone who is interested and open to advice, someone who doesn't start the meeting like this, as far away from me as possible. Again, psychology and body language. So investable assets, open to advice, and really genuinely does want to make a plan, wants to see step by step, here's where I am, here's where I want to go, and here's how I get there, and is open to following that.
And you're under the flag of which company again?
Morgan Stanley.
Okay. That's who my dad's with. My dad's been with Morgan Stanley for 50 years.
Very well, I like.
No, 70 years. 70 years.
Holy cow. I like what you said earlier about your dad's strategy to dollar cost averaging, and happy to go into that as well if you want this time or another time. But Mike, I think that would help also what you were saying, eliminate some of the up and down fears of just, this is what I do. It's on a consistent basis. And it's been shown that with the dollar cost averaging strategy, you do typically come out on top of the average.
Yeah.
Mike, do we have time for a quick explanation? Can you do it in 1 minute, Kristen?
Yeah.
Yeah, we got time.
I can do it in 1 minute. I can do it less than 1 minute. I can do 10 seconds. Think of your 401k. You give a set amount of your paycheck every single pay period to your 401k. That's dollar cost averaging. Doesn't matter if the market's up, down, you're putting the same amount in every single pay period.
And not in panic, not pulling out in panic.
Exactly.
Yeah. And my dad always said, listen, when IBM, because he would do blue chips, GE, IBM, right? He said when the stock price is higher, I buy less. When it's lower, I buy more. And over time, it's a good thing. So listen, I'm in the chat.
I'll throw my information in there.
Oh, can you put it in there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Awesome. Well, listen, it was really great. We met on what, Cup of Joe or Coffee Talk, or which one did we meet on?
Cup of Joe.
Cup of Joe. So just for the people out there listening, Kristen and I met on an online networking thing, and we're big proponents of that. One of the other things that you may not know about Mike, Kristen, is he built his entire business on networking. And I remember 25 years ago, it had to be 25 years ago, I used to go to Mike's events. And there was a girl that invited me, and at the time I kind of had the hots for her, to be honest with you. So she invited me to this event. I remember, I'm just being honest.
Yeah.
It's 25 years ago. So, but Mike was there with his partner, and I was like, these guys are onto something. Every twice a week, Mike, you'd have like 50 people in a room, or what was that?
Yeah, 20 people on Tuesday, 20 people on Thursday, and they were always new faces. So it was interesting how we were able to do that back then with no social media, and today it's different. So
yeah, except for me, I showed up every week because Maria kept inviting me. So but seriously, my point is,
because we serve pizza.
Yeah, that's true. You pizza. But honestly, the point is, get out there, right? Get out there. Go to different events, meet different people, because you never know. You just never know who you're going to run into or what synergies you're going to have. And I'm always a proponent of action is always better than inaction, because even if you take the wrong action, if you're going to learn something, as opposed to if you take no action, there's no opportunity to learn. And my hockey coach used to tell me, is to make errors of commission as opposed to errors of omission. In other words, do something, even if it's not the right play or the right thing, you're going to learn something. And it's always better than not doing anything. And so for people listening, if you get out there, if you don't know that much about real estate, it's okay. We all started in the same spot. Get out there, go to networking events, instant message Mike and I, go to Clubhouse, because that's where you're going to learn. That's where you're going to meet people. And, Kristen, you're a perfect example. If you and I both weren't there at that thing, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. You like networking events, Kristen?
I love them, and also have built my practice on networking. And in fact, if anybody listening is in the Chicago area, I also run a women's networking club in
Can I come?
Unfortunately, I don't think you fit the criteria.
I'm single though.
Maybe we'll have a mixer and you can come. I'll invite you to that.
Is there a name of it? I mean, can you put that in the chat or what?
Yeah, sure. I'll type it. It's so it's an arm of another networking group, which that one is any gender. So I'd be happy to send you an invite. But the one that it is a branch off of is called Strategic Introductions League, SIL. So I run Women of SIL.
And there's a woman I met the other night, Mike, the party I went to. Very interesting gal. I think she'd be a really good connection for you too. She was at a real estate event, and she buys businesses, right? So her and I.
Who's that, Holly?
Yeah, Holly. Do you know Holly?
Yeah, I know Holly really well.
Oh yeah, Holly's great.
Yeah, she's
awesome. We should have her on the show. Yeah, I'll make an introduction for you too, because she's a real dynamic. She has an engineering degree from Purdue, just a really sharp gal, and she's buying businesses. So she might be a good person for that group.
Yeah, great.
And I also think that you need to know Allison. So I will do an introduction for you and Allison.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Say it again.
I'm writing them down. I'm going to keep you guys accountable.
Yeah. Kristen, why don't you tell people how they get a hold of you, best way to find you and track you down?
Yeah. I think, like both of you have mentioned, it starts with a conversation. It starts with putting yourself out there. So even if you're listening and it's intimidating, and I know that talking about money can sometimes be scary, it brings up ego or feelings of how have I done up to this point, always have a conversation. And I will talk with everybody. I can't work with everybody, but I promise that from that initial conversation, even if we don't work together, you'll walk away with more education than what you came to the table with. So I threw my email and phone number into the chat. It's kristen.summers@morganstanley.com. Email me. Let's have a conversation and see where you're at. And if I can help, great. If not, I'll send you to somewhere where someone can.
Yeah. I always like that when people say, hey, if I can't help you, I'm going to send you to somewhere that can help you. And what's funny is when you say that to people kind of, they go back on that and they go, really? You would do that? Yeah, of course I would do that. So, because if I'm not the right sponsor, if I'm not the right property manager, if I'm not the right broker for you, you've got to go to somebody who's going to be right for you, because you deserve that. So I don't know that I thought that when I was younger though, so.
Ego, it takes some ego dropping.
Boy, and that happens from brokenness. So that's a whole nother show. So
yeah.
Yeah, I had a sales manager, great sales manager. When I started, I was selling equipment. I got a job that they were hiring PhDs and guys with master's degrees. I just BS my way into the sales. I had no business being there. We were selling to government and high end military and everything else. I was got in there. I ended up being the top salesperson because I had a different mindset. But Mike Hurd was a big part of that. He always used to tell me, he said, solve people's problems. Find out what the challenge is, find out what the pain points are, and solve the problems. He said, if you try to sell equipment, you're going to flop. He said, solve the problem. And there were times where we were selling the Rolls Royce, and there were times where they needed a Ford pickup. And I would just say, you know what? You don't need the Rolls Royce. You need the Ford pickup. And I would always, almost invariably, a month or two down the road, I'd get a call back from them and say, we need a couple Rolls Royces. And so we could, you know what I mean? But I didn't come at it from trying to sell our equipment. I came at it from solving their problems. And I was the top salesman for 3 years in a row because of that, where everybody else was trying to push our product down their throat. And that's just not a good approach. So, yeah. But anyway, well, listen, Kristen, I know we're getting to the top of the hour. Mike, I'll let you close up, but really great to see you. I hope you have some wonderful plans for the holidays. Do you stay in the area, or do you go back to New York or out to LA, or what do you do?
I'll be here. My parents are in the suburbs, so that's where I'll be.
Oh,
nice.
cool.
What suburb?
Naperville?
Okay.
Yeah.
I grew up in Palatine, so that's
okay. There you go.
Yeah. Hey, so remember, use the hashtag #cashflow2wealth, number 2, right, in everything that you do. So, Carl, you want to plug your book one more time?
Yeah, no, anybody that's interested, I put in the chat. You can get a free copy of an excerpt. It's the introduction, the first chapter, a couple exercises. Yeah, absolutely. It's not released yet. I'm just doing this for the holidays, so I'll put it in the chat again. You just go to that link and you can download it. And then probably January 1, we're going to release it on all the platforms. But man, that's a whole nother business. Thank goodness I've got somebody really great that's helping me out with that. But yeah, so I will put that in the chat again. It's a real simple link. And then just for you, Mike, also for those of you that haven't read Mike's book, he wrote a great book. It's all about beginning with the end in mind. And it's so unique because nobody else writes about that. Everybody tells you, you buy a multifamily building, you're just going to get checks in the mail. And believe me, as an owner of buildings, that's not the way it works. You definitely want to plan with or begin with the end in mind. And that's what Mike's book's all about. So, and how do they get that, Mike? They go to your website?
Yeah, then go to my website. I had it in the stream for a while, but mycoreintentions.com/exit plan. You can download a free copy there. And Kristen, I'll send you a copy of that along with the video when we download later tonight. So, and remember, if you are in Chicago, you're looking for property management help, Urban REI Property Management. We are currently specializing in the residential as well as the multifamily space. So if you need help, just questions, whatever, don't hesitate to reach out to me and give me a call. Kristen, what are you doing this weekend?
I'm actually going on a apartment tour with a friend of mine. She's looking at my building today. And then I'm going to the suburbs and I'm putting up my parents' Christmas tree.
Nice. Good for you. Carl, how about you?
I'm just hanging out. I'm gonna go and see what's happening at the hockey rink and maybe go skating and then Sunday. Well, we're gonna meet Carly's coming in town, right? So I'll probably meet you guys for dinner.
Yeah. Carly, I been in conversation with Carly for probably 4 weeks now about going to work for me, and she wanted to come to town, and she's from St. Louis, so she's going to come up, spend the day with me on Monday, and so we'll go to dinner Sunday night. So that
she seems like a very interesting person, so I hope that works out for you guys.
Yeah. So finding somebody who can manage your life and run your life these days is a task in itself. A lot of people are proponents for the Philippines or overseas and somebody for $4 or $5 an hour, but it's not like having somebody outside your door,
Well, in California, there's actually people that do that for a living, right? Right.
Yeah. It's like, right. So, hey, everybody, thanks for being here. This has been this week's episode of Multifamily Unplugged. My co-host Moose, and just so everybody knows, next week I'll be our last show for the year. We'll take the next couple of weeks off for Christmas and New Year's. And so, tell somebody, wake somebody up, stick a cup of coffee in their hand next week, have them show up and be here with us. I know we're going to have a great guest, probably not as great as this week's. And they're listening right now. I can't remember who it is, but I'm sorry I said that. So we're definitely going to have to step our game up. I'm going to have to go back and revisit the roster for next year. I think
we actually have had some great guests. And from now on, Kristen, from now on, we're going to ask everybody. So, did you win any awards in fourth grade? Tell me about fourth grade.
Accolades.
Can you write music?
Yeah. When's the last time you wrote a song?
You wrote any songs lately? And tell me about your fourth grade experience. We're going to get some blank faces on that one, right, Mike? Like, what?
Hey, what award did you win before sixth grade?
Mm-hmm. It's important.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here this week. We love you. Remember, go out, like us, love us, follow us, subscribe to us wherever you hang out on social media. That's where you'll find us. And we'll see you here next Saturday. Bye, guys.